Hi, everyone. Welcome to Little Free Library Unbound. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lexi Neely, and I'm the program coordinator at Little Free Library. My colleague Shelby, who is our director of programs, is helping me run Unbound. She is running the tech in the background, so if you have any questions or issues with your view or the volume, you can send those in the chat either directly to Shelby or just to everyone, and we will try to answer those questions and help troubleshoot as needed. You can also feel free to leave questions for our panelists in the chat. If we have time, we always try to get to any additional questions that come up during the course of the event. So without further ado, I am pleased to introduce LFL's National Board Chair, Anita Marina, who will be our moderator today. Hi, Anita.
Hi, Lexi, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for what promises to be a really stimulating and important conversation. This is welcome back to Little Free Library Unbound. I feel like we've had a summer that's been one for the ages between heat and weather-related issues, and then also just these unprecedented book challenges and issues that keep coming up, especially for those of us who are book advocates. So as you know, the 2022 celebration of Banned Books Week will be September 18th to 24th. And we know above all others, our stewards are very, very passionate about equitable book access and the importance of amplifying voices and raising the opportunities for increasing opportunities for children and young adults and others to see themselves in the pages of books, and also to be able to share their love of books without hesitation. We're going to be joined today by 4 stewards who are engaging with banned and challenged books throughout their Little Free Libraries, and they're doing it in really, really unique ways. So we're excited to share that. But before we do that, or before we introduce all of our wonderful guests, we just wanted to share some background information for you on book challenges. First of all, we should explain what the difference is between banned books versus challenged books. So a challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict materials based on the objections of a person or a group. This is kind of what a lot of you across the country and in other places are seeing even more now, but banning books still continues. So in a banning is a complete removal of those materials. So that's a distinction that all of us are dealing with. And right now in 2020 or in 2021, we have an infographic from the wonderful American Library Association of the 10 most challenged books of 2021. So here are the top 5, and then we have the remaining 5 on the next slide. So you'll see that there are some really critical issues that are being raised by the books that are being challenged right now and banned. And so this is really important about how to really be knowledgeable about the issue, about the atmosphere out there. So the next slide, you can see that ALA has really shared the most common reasons given for a ban or a challenge. This provides a helpful context for understanding what's happening, understanding the content. If you haven't read the titles before, you'll notice on this graphic, they're almost all teen and young adult books. Very often those are the ones that raise the most eyebrows amongst some communities and, you know, receive just these responses. There are more infographics as possible, and you can then take a closer look at the link in the chat that Shelby has shared, but these are really critical issues. Finally, another important issue to this puzzle is context. So in the news recently, we know that most of the bans and challenges come from parents who feel that the content may be inappropriate for the children and teenagers to have access to. But some of the book challenges stem from a recognition that titles or authors may be truly problematic. You know, it depends. You know, so in reference to the first one, some of these challenges there have been parent groups and others who from all sorts of places are banding together to grant, to share challenged books and book lists and start getting people in front of school boards, etc. But there are book challenges that stem from recognition that the titles or the authors, there may be some truly problematic issues around those books. So Julia the Wolves, for example, by Jean Craig George, is a book that many of us are familiar with, and it's been challenged by those in the indigenous communities for misrepresenting the Inupiaq people and perpetuating harmful stereotypes. So that's something that is being raised more and more, and importantly so. Dr. Debbie Reese, who is sort of the blogger, curator of American Indigenous children's literature, is sort of at the forefront of this type of recognition that not all books that often present indigenous characters and other characters are doing it in a useful way. And so she serves also on the Our Diverse Books advisory board. And so you'll see on her blog several blog posts where you can see the basis behind which she has challenged it. So when you think about book bans and challenges, think about, and as the infographic says, consider the reason for the ban or challenge. Consider when and where the book was written by and by whom. So, for example, Dr. Reese has challenged things like Island of the Blue Dolphins. Well, it's because, the indigenous characters are presented in a certain light or stereotyped and romanticized, etc. And then consider who's impacted by the books, characters and thematic construct and so on. So these are things that are really important, and you can see authors and librarians in particular and educators really trying to tackle this issue because it is about creating better understanding. Now, another similar example, of course, is Sherman Alexie, whose book, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, was on the last slide. Now, his books have been challenged for both the content that's been deemed inappropriate, but also there have been allegations against the author himself, and you can find some of the issues raised by Dr. Reese in her blogs. And so there's a great deal of information on her blogs and in other discussions. So these are really important. And really, we have some very rich opportunities to discuss exactly that. With those examples in mind, we have an opportunity now to really tackle some of the things that have been happening around it. So we can talk about the context of these challenges. As you saw in the infographic, we need to take a early look and take a closer look. So we have some good opportunities to talk to our stewards. The final thing was, think about who is impacted by the books, who do not have, or by the people who do or do not have access to the books. So there may be those for whom have access to the books, and the books are full of stereotypes, who stereotype them as someone from that culture or community. Then again, there are others who have limited access to both the community and limited access to books that are often more, important and realistic and true to the thematic concept, and then the people. And then so, you don't want them forming the same stereotypes around groups, and that's very often the case of those of us who are in various marginalized communities. So let's start with our guests, and we'll take it from there, because I really look forward to more of the conversation. So putting in context. So our first couple of guests are Katie and Krista Cohen, who are stewards of the Little Creer Library, charter number 110390 in Waltham, Massachusetts. And I thank you both, because as a parent, proud parent of a queer child, it's nice to see and celebrate what you're doing. So thank you very much for joining us. Our
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Our next guest is Mai Lei, steward of the Skyline Book Box, charter number 119005 in Daly City, California. And thank you very, very much, Mai. So I appreciate you being there. And then our third guest today is Brandy McPherson, whose TARDIS, Little Free Library, as you can see this wonderful TARDIS box, is located in Northridge, California. And thank you for joining us, Brandy. So Brandy and I, both of you, Katie and Krista, this is going to be a great conversation. So let's start first with Katie and Krista. Katie and Krista, you've experienced such a strong response, of course, to your library that you've made national news a number of times, just multiple times. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you've dealt with the responses to your Little Free Library?
Yeah, we have been working with our library since 2020, but it wasn't until last year that we started to get a lot of movement on what we were doing. When we first, so as some background for our library, we specialize in providing LGBT plus books that are by about LGBT plus authors or characters or what have you. When we first got started, we had about like 50% of our books were LGBT books, and the other 50% were just regular books that you would find in any free library. The reason for that was just our resources at the time, it being a volunteer thing that we were doing. That's what we were able to provide. But those books were really popular, and we wanted to provide those for as many people as we could. What ended up happening, however, was we had a clear out, like a lot of Little Free Libraries have. However, this one, they targeted all of the children's books, the young adult books that were LGBT themed in nature. They left everything else in the library. So that happened one time, and that was a little bit strange. It happened a second time within a week of the first incident. And we really thought that it was starting to be a little bit more targeted for the types of materials that we were providing. Along with that, within our community at the same exact time, there was a book ban that was trying to be put place for some books that were in the high school. So there was a book ban that was being suggested for genderqueer, and a book ban that was being suggested for This Book is Gay, which are both on the top 10 books that have been banned or challenged across the country within the past year. So that was happening at the same time, and it felt like it was connected in a way of people trying to take these books out of the hands of people who needed them and needed to read them.
Especially when someone comes in the middle of the night when no one can see them and loads up their bags of books directly in their car.
So we experienced this a couple of times, and I posted about it on social media, not thinking that anything would come of it, but it really took off, and it allowed more people to know that we were here and this is what we were offering, that we were trying to get these books out to the community, that we were trying to fight this book ban that was happening in our own town. Luckily, that book ban didn't take place, and we have gotten a lot more publicity and a lot more people who have come to try to use us as a resource. So it's been amazing because now we have more resources to be able to send books to anybody who needs them, to send them within our community and also outside of it. We've also been able to set up a book drive where we have raised funds to provide the elementary and middle school libraries within our community with over in total 200 books that center LGBT characters or people. Those we're slowly distributing because there's a little bit of supply chain issues with getting the books right now.
Sure.
But we're slowly distributing those. So we've really been able to take something that we're both really passionate about, and use this negative experience that we've had and the publicity that came from that to be able to push forward in getting more of these books out into the community.
That's wonderful. That's a great example. You know, that's so important to have your books in, you know, present and available for young people who need to see them, who know that they are there for them, and being able to hear and see themselves. And then for you to hang in there, because it's not easy, as everyone knows. So we appreciate you. I'm sure that those in the Stewart community also really feel for you and feel with you and are there with you. And so we are as well. So I think we'll have some more details and ability to chat about that as well, because your community has really come together around this, hasn't it? And have you heard from young people as well, based on a lot of this?
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of younger people coming to the library because it's right in front of our house.
Yeah.
So occasionally we can see who's there.
Yeah.
And that's been great. We had some kid run by saying, "We love Gay House." And yeah, so we've had some positive stuff. We get a lot of messages from parents, especially, who are thanking us for providing this resource, and the parents bring their young kids by to pick up books. The really important thing with having resources, a lot of donations come in, and having enough funds to do what we do is we're able to buy new books, and LGBT topics and viewpoints have changed so wildly over the past 20 years that it's really, really important to get the new books out there, because the new books have the diversity of sexuality and gender and people in general. And, you know, some of these old books just kind of, we look at them and we're like, oh, this is LGBT, but we read through and it's like, oh, this is a little dated. So, you know, so that's really important for us too, is to give the up-to-date information that is generally accepted now.
Yeah. Well, and what's great is that it encourages young writers. It encourages more authors to be out there writing these stories and writing, to know that they're part of a community and a growing community. And again, it's about seeing that. One of the things you mentioned is, of course, a banned book drive. So I'm going to switch over to you, Brandy. So thank you both. Brandy, about pioneering banned book drives. How did that come about? You know, banned books isn't something new. I was at a talk with Fran Lebowitz, and we were talking about Toni Morrison's book being one of this. And she said, no, Toni was the proudest thing that her book was there. Although Nikki Grimes had a point that, you know, being proud of it is one thing, that their book is resonating, but that there's an effort to prevent these books from appearing is another thing altogether. And that's, you know, nobody wants their book to be banned because they want their book to be accessible to all. So tell us, Brandy, what you've been doing and how you've been trying to tackle all of this, and what would your advice be to somebody wanting to do something similar?
Sure. So for me, back in January, which was when my little library just was getting started, is when the McKinn County School Board in Tennessee made national news because they banned the graphic novel Mouse by Art Spiegelman. And so I just kind of jumped into action around that without even thinking it through very much. And I went to my local comic book shop and I reached out online and just bought kind of up as many copies as I could find. I kind of got a little bit of a jump on it because they sold out that week. Like Mouse became, you know, by February became one of the best on the bestsellers list again, because so many people wanted to get this banned book. And then I posted on the Little Free Library Facebook page for Tennessee little libraries that were interested in receiving a copy. And the response was really overwhelming. Not only did I get a bunch of addresses from Tennessee libraries, but a bunch of other people chimed in saying they wanted to send copies too. So we ended up at that time between me and some other stewards and some friends of mine sending 12 different copies of Mouse to Tennessee Little Free Libraries back in February. So with Banned Book Week approaching, I knew I wanted to kind of do something a little more organized. And I decided to focus on Texas because they lead the nation in banned books. I think it's some 713 books that have been banned in Texas, affecting 16 different school districts. So I put a poll out on my Insta asking, which book I should collect. I was doing between Stamped by Jason Reynolds and Genderqueer. And Krista and Katie, they chimed in saying, hey, if you want to do Genderqueer, we'll take on Genderqueer, you can take on Stamped. And so we both started, we did some joint posts and we started putting it out there to gather books. So we put links on our page for books from local bookstores. So they did a local bookstore that is owned by queer owners. I did one owned by Black owners so that we could kind of also give money into that community. And then we set a goal of collecting 15 copies of each book. So far, we've gathered several more than what we were asking for, and we're working on right now kind of packing them up and getting them ready to ship out to Texas Little Libraries. We're actually a few addresses shy, so if there are some Texas Little Libraries out there looking to get a copy of Genderqueer and a copy of Stamped, they should reach out through my Insta or their Insta and let us know, because we'll add those addresses to our list.
Yeah, I see some Texas Little Free Library stewards in the chat. So welcome. You can check them out. Definitely reach out. This is a great opportunity for the community to come together and support one another. And we know of all the challenges taking place. I think what is it? Idaho has and Tennessee has long lists of books that they're adding to that. And so we have an opportunity to talk to you. You've been a champion for, really for sharing diverse books from the beginning. And this is something that's really important to you. And as somebody who's also in the Asian American community, we didn't see ourselves in the pages of books for many, many years. And it's really wonderful to see just we're in mysteries, we're in all these different places. That this is something that's really meaningful to you. And I do also want to note that during and it's still sadly continuing this growing state of anti-Asian violence, one of the things that people were doing was sharing books by Asian and Pacific Islander authors. And so that was really, really meaningful. So tell me about your Little Free Library there. And why it's important for you to share diverse books in your library, and what's been your approach for your reading color library? How do you tackle it? What do you look for? And what kind of tips you have for people who are looking for books to place in their own libraries? Thank you, May. I'm sorry. That's Mai. I'm sorry.
Yes,
you know what? I have a friend who spells it the same way, and she just can pronounce it May. So Mai. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So I'm in Daly City, California. We're right outside of San Francisco, and I feel so lucky. We live in a very racially diverse city, about 60% Asian American and 20% Latinx. So it was no question for me from the start that it was important for me to share diverse books. Like we've all said, everyone should see themselves and their lived experiences reflected on the page, and to have their identities affirmed. For so long, those of us who are in historically oppressed demographics, haven't seen ourselves as main characters, with all the complexity that comes with that. We might be the best friend or a background character, or someone who helps someone, a white person on their journey. But when is it our turn to be the main characters? I'm still understanding the power of that in my adulthood now that I have more access to these wonderful diverse books. I just recently finished a book called The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling. And it's the first time I've ever read a book about an Asian girl trying to navigate teenage life while secretly having a mentally ill parent. And, that was me. When I was that age, I literally thought I was the only person who knew what that was like just with the cultural nuances of stigma and the different beliefs about mental illness, both in the predominant society and then within your family as well. And just reading the book was so emotional for me, even just talking about it now, for a lot of reasons. But I think, you know, part of why it's emotional is just thinking about how my life could have been different, seeing myself on the page and not feeling so alone. So I just think it's so important for everyone to have that experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it also enables, a child who, or a young adult in that same, in that same situation, now to be able to talk about it with another, with a peer or with somebody in their community. I think you're absolutely right that, some of these challenges that we all face, to see them in the pages of a book allow us the room to seek out understanding. I think in the same way, both Katie and Krista, having issues around identity is something that, some cultures, it's difficult to raise the topic. So with a book, you have an opportunity to do that. You can use that as a point, a starting point for a conversation, and how rich that is. So I thank you for that. And I completely agree and understand in your passion for doing that and making that sort of, openness and avenue for sharing is really, really terrific. So let's talk about some of our own favorites from each of you. We'll start with Katie and Crystal. Let's talk about some of our favorite books that seem to always end up on either challenged or banned lists, and what makes them important and special for you to share. So let's start with the two of you, and then I'll go to Mai, and then I'll go to Brandy. Yeah. You're all in my gallery view in order. So. So we'll start at the top, Katie, and both of you.
Yeah, so one of my favorite ones that I love recommending to just people in general is This Book is Gay, which I mentioned earlier. The reason I heard about it was because it was trying to be banned in my community. So I decided to check it out. And it's kind of a self-help guide type of thing, walks you through what it means to be part of the LGBT community, talks about the different identities and what that means. And it's really set up as a way for teens and young adults to kind of help reflect and think through, am I this identity that I'm like thinking about or experiencing or anything like that? And it's also like, am I alone in what I'm feeling?
In addition, Juno Dawson, the author of that book, also wrote a book called What's the Tea, which is sort of a follow-up book, but it's about her being trans, and it talks about, same sort of identity things as the other book, but it's more tailored towards trans identity. So those books together are probably good books to refer people to, because they were also written very recently, so they also have like modern ideas about that sort of thing.
Plus, they're also just entertaining. They're funny. The author has like a really good way of making the things that they're talking about approachable, but then also throwing in like pop culture references or things like that to make it entertaining as you're reading it.
Yeah.
So I like recommending it to people who are questioning. I also like recommending it to parents of LGBT people because even though they're not the direct audience for it, a lot of people have found it very helpful to have that as kind of a primer. So that's one that's really good. A book that I personally have read recently that I really enjoy is Detransition Baby. That's an adult novel, and that's more on the challenge side than being banned, but it is a really excellent book that's focusing on some trans women and their experiences and how they experience life and everything like that.
It has the kind of nuance that you don't usually see when it comes to like trans topics, because there is the a character in that book that does detransition. And usually you see that in the context of, trans people that regretted what, them transitioning, and then they become anti-trans. But like, this is a very nuanced look at why society would sort of lead someone down that path. But in general, if there's a banned book, there's someone who wants it banned. And why do they want it banned? It's usually because it goes against their general cultural sensitivities and sensibilities. So, those are the books that you want to read.
Yeah. And it's again a conversation. Why not have a conversation? Have the book still out there, but have the conversation around that. I'm looking at my little gallery. So we're going to go to you, and then Brandy will go to you. Like, tell me about books that have been favorites of yours in both banned or challenged in that arena.
Sure, yeah. So one that I can't stop recommending to people is Front Desk. It's a middle grade book by Kelly Yang, but I recommend it for everyone, adults included. And it's about a Chinese girl whose immigrant family runs a motel in Southern California. And, it talks about their experience in poverty. It's got a great diverse cast of funny and heartwarming characters. And you see this 10-year-old grapple with making sense of injustice, experiencing racism, and finding her strengths and talents, and of course making some mistakes along the way too. And unfortunately, this book has been banned in New York and Pennsylvania, certain school districts, for having an anti-racism agenda, for allegedly being part of the CRT movement. And so parents were asking that their child be removed from class, when this book was being read aloud. And it's heartbreaking to me, because this is really just it's a funny book. It's heartwarming. It's all that you could want from a middle grade book.
Mm-hmm. And, and a lot of this deals with things that historically happened. It's not as though these things didn't happen to our communities. The issue is our invisibility. And so finally having books that raise some of these issues and experience, and finding that, what you lose by banning it is that teachable moment to talk about it and to learn about it. And, we wouldn't have some of the leaders that we have if they weren't there challenging what was unjust. And so thank you. That's a great, I have to put that one on my list. So I actually do follow you on Instagram, I think, because I keep finding all these great books from you very often. So thank you. I really love it. So Brandy, how about you? Do you have a book or a couple of books that are favorites of yours?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm a 4th and 5th grade teacher, and one of the books I love to have my kids read, and one of my favorite kind of middle grade books is Melissa. And one of the things I love about it is the discussion over the title. So Melissa is about a trans girl. The book was originally named George, which was the dead name of Melissa. And the author really took feedback from that to heart. And there was a whole Sharpie project where everyone was crossing out the name and writing the new name. And now it has been republished under Melissa. So it just brings up some amazing conversations with the class around it. If we have old copies, they love to cross it out and write it, correctly. And so that's always a really great one to have conversations with children. Personally, for me, Perks of Being a Wallflower is an important one, because it was kind of important to me in my late teens, early 20s. And it deals with a lot of topics around, there's gay characters, but there's also, suicide attempts and depression and things like that. That is kind of where the bans have come from, or where the challenges have come from about that kind of topic. But I just remember as a teen really identifying with the characters in the book, and having that as a connection point was really important to me.
Yeah. A couple of my favorites. Hey Kiddo by Jarek Koshashka is always it's challenged, because he actually delves into his own personal history and so and the challenges he faced with having some of the abuse. And I think when you're raising some of those topics, it's problematic, but to some people, but really helpful to others. And I think that those are really stamped as you mentioned, again, a fact that Ibram X. Kendi also noted that how to raise an anti-racist baby is actually on a lot of challenge lists. And then Zetta Elliott's, her book that starts with Say Her Name. It's a book of poetry, and it's dedicated, of course, to Breonna Taylor, and that has found its way onto many lists. When you're starting to raise these issues and insights, it's so, it makes our work that much more important as people in the book sharing universe and the opportunity. We had a couple of notes here that some of these books are finding their ways into Target and other bookstores. So thank goodness. I think one of the things you do is ask for these books, as librarians and book advocates, seek out these books and put them on their shelves, but also ask for them at libraries, show at schools, and say, support the authors. The authors really want to hear from all of you. Another question is beyond providing books with diverse perspectives to your communities, are there other resources that you like to share on book banning, or the importance of diversifying our bookshelves, or sources for where can you find books? I mean, for some people who are more isolated, where can you find resources, and where can you find good discussions about the importance? So we'll start, we'll go back in the other order. Brandy, we'll start with you, then and then Katie and Krista.
So yeah, I live in a pretty liberal state in a pretty liberal county. So I'm very fortunate in that we don't see a lot of banned or challenged books happening within the school districts in my area. But I'm pretty active on Instagram, and so I've been posting, a lot of information around banned books. I'm doing features of banned books and information on those on there. And I've also started adding labels to the banned books that come through my library saying why that book has been banned. Yeah. So I have a label with kind of like blank lines on it, and I'll write why the book has been banned. To kind of help educate those who take the book out of our library or who are looking for it. And I am doing all banned books in my library for the month of September also, as a way to kind of get the neighborhood seeing and thinking and talking about it. It's interesting though, because on my social media, somebody commented that they were worried about labeling the books because if they don't live in an area like mine, people might target those books to remove from the library if they're labeled in that way. So I'm curious about, where that line might fall and what other places might choose to do around labeling books like that. Some other people have used bookmarks or other ways of kind of noting that the book has been banned or challenged.
Yeah. Maya, any advice for you?
Well, I was just going to say, I think with all types of advocacy, it's so important to follow the lead of those who've been championing these causes for much longer, who are organized in that way, so you can make sure that your efforts are aligned with that and that you're furthering the cause in a helpful way. So I've learned so much from following American Library Association and We Need Diverse Books. Both of them have shared a lot of great information about banned books and what to do about it. And they have toolkits for how you can respond in your community. And so, one of the things that I've learned from those accounts is just that, just buying and donating books isn't enough, and that we should really be aiming to encourage people to be part of the system so that these challenges aren't happening in the first place. And so, that means voting in school board elections, getting in communication with your library, supporting the staff there, figuring out how would residents even know if a book has been banned or challenged. That's something for me that I just assume that they're not happening in my community, but I don't actually truly know because we don't have that much, visibility into it necessarily. So just really trying to peel back the curtain a little bit, asking questions and making sure that you're supporting the libraries in whatever ways that you can through time or money.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you said that, because that is such a critical role you can play in really in the public conversations and public support, very visible support, and making sure that those librarians and officials are out there. But I'm so glad you said vote. Vote and run and be a part of the decision-making community, or at least be there to make your voice heard, because if there are those who challenge out at the school board meetings, and be a voice. It's risky, because not everything is without risk, and when you do speak out, but it is, you also find sources of support. And I also note that authors are out there supporting one another and supporting libraries and so on. There's a nice, lovely long question, but I'm going to get you, the two of you, Katie and Krista, first, and before I get to Jen's wonderful point and question for all of you.
Sure. So one of the things that we do to sort of share information about books is we direct the people that we connect with on our various social media accounts to buy books from our local mom and pop type booksellers. So we have an LGBT focused bookshop that is a couple towns over, and we often direct them to go there to look for books to, read to their kids or buy for other libraries, etc. And one thing that you can do to help your community locally is, if you have some of those shops and they don't have the books you're looking for, you can just ask them if they can order some, and then point them at these other bookshops that are actually selling these books, because they might just not know about them. So, right. In general, that's helping add, for us, mostly LGBT books and those sorts of banned books to more bookshops, because you just ask them, and often they'll say, one shop said to me the other day, do you have a list of books that you would recommend getting? And then we sent them the list of our wish list of books for our little library, and this is a real bookstore that's looking into it. So that's a really important thing. Another thing is, people just need to know who these people who are trying to ban these books are. And oftentimes they're not just the, a citizen of your town that is concerned for the children, right? In our situation, in Waltham, Mass, the book ban came from really an organization that was organized towards protesting various different things for various bizarre reasons. And only one of the people in that organization was from our town at all. And all the people that were coming to these school council meetings and everything and disrupting the meeting, they weren't from here. They were from elsewhere. And that was the thing that they did in their sad lives, was to cause commotion, right? So some people might think, oh yeah, there's so many people in my community that think my way, and then they get turned because they find a topic to latch onto. But you got to realize that no, most of the time this isn't, people don't care, Yeah. So spreading that information about who these people are that are challenging the books, I think is really important.
And they're going state to state, and they're, or they're handing off and sending a list of books, and a community group may not even know about most of those books or know the context or anything about those books. So just basically then put them in front. I mean, the other thing I think when I was at NEA and we were doing a lot of political work, we did a lot of coffee clutches, where you do a more private talk, and you could gather some people and talk about, do a little book group talk, or do what, and now in the age of Zoom, you can do more so that, you can have a group of parents or adults or kids, who can just sort of tune in, and you can have the opportunity to share information. So I actually have, let's see, I'm sorry, Jen, I'll try to go over it. So one question from Jen Nails is, I wonder what the panelists think, especially Katie and Krista, think about where the LGBTQ plus movement is headed. I agree on that books on this theme have changed and appeared, thank goodness, so much in the last 20 years. So where do you see the movement in regards to children's literature in particular, say 20 years from now? She says, I ask because things are changing and evolving so quickly. We're at a stage where we're literally crossing off titles of books written by very woke authors because they didn't even get it right. So, and that's a challenge, and then I think you and I would, some people, because of this support for diverse books, there's real need and desire for it. There are people who just want to plug in diverse characters, diverse themes, and so on, without really a knowledge of our community, whether it's Black, Latinx, Asian American, but because they sort of see dollar signs, or people who, are not within the community or really have knowledge of it, trying to, plug themselves in without really considering both the impact on authors who really are out there and have historically out there, and those stories and those characters and the readers. So anyway, let's start with you. I'm sorry. Let's start with you, the three of you, if you want to answer Jen's questions at all.
Yeah. So I agree with the LGBT books in general. Within the last decade or so, things have changed so much, even since when I first came out, with language and everything like that, but also just the quality of books that are out there, and the types of books that, just the types of identities that are covered, and just how detailed they can get into them. I know when I first came out, there was I myself identify as bisexual. There was literally nothing out there that matched my lived experience as a bisexual person. Nowadays, there's so many different types of books. There's different types of characters, because just being bisexual doesn't mean that everybody's going to be the same person.
Yeah.
So I think I struggle with it as well, of trying to figure out what books to put in there. One of the resources that I really like looking at is there's the Stonewall Awards. They go through and they give awards to books each year that have positive representation in them. And so that's a really good resource to stick to. And just thinking about trying to talk within the community of LGBT people, and seeing like what is the type of representation that you're looking for, and where can I find those books to be able to share them.
Quickly, the thing that I'm looking for going to the future is just normalization, basically. Like some people, like another book that I bought recently, I forget what it was called, but it was a children's book, but it was all about like not reading. It was this kid that wanted to read a book with this young boy that wanted to read a book that was, the main character was female, right, the girl. And everyone was like, the bookseller in this was saying, oh, don't you want to read this book? And then, you should be able to read a book and get something out of it and see yourself in the character, like regardless of your sex or your gender or whatever. And being able to, like, people wanting to read books where the character, like, you're a young white boy in the character, you should be able to read a book that is not about a young white straight boy, for instance. So that sort of normalization of these books sort of going into the general, this general pool of books as readable books, without like people being like, oh, are you questioning your sexuality? or something like that, I think that will be huge. And
Right.
that's more of a cultural shift than necessarily a shift in the books themselves, but there
Mm.
being more options out there, and with characters that aren't necessarily, oh, this character is gay, big reveal, and it's just a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just natural. That's just the course of society and community, and that is part of our lives, which is very present. Mai and then Brandy, do you both have any comment or anything to share as well?
Well, I did want to respond to what you were saying about, diversity sort of being a trend right now in books. And so I think it's imperative that we still be critical when we're picking up books, especially, we might see a character of color on the cover and assume that it's a read in color book. But, now before I really highlight a book as read in color, I make sure to do some Googling, because a lot of them are still by white authors, and it can be pretty surprising. One resource I look to a lot is Social Justice Books,
Mhm.
and they have book lists that are really thoughtfully curated. They have folks who are have that lived experience to provide reviews on a lot of them. So I think we just have to still be critical and not just accept books that, they change the color of the skin and therefore that's a diverse book.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead, Brandy, and I'll.
Oh, I was just going to say, and kind of back to what Krista was saying too. A lot of anti-racist work and a lot of the things we're doing, like in my classroom and stuff now, have to do with like the term windows and mirrors,
Mhm.
right? So you want windows into other people's experiences and other people's lives, and mirrors where you can see yourself in the characters and in the writing. And so I'm always thinking about that when I'm looking at books and thinking in those terms. And I also agree that, looking at who is writing the books is really important in whether you get good representation. So, when culling books from like the school library, for instance, if we're finding books about, Indigenous people written by white authors, we're more likely to pull those books, because it's important to look at whose voice we're really hearing, as well as, who is being represented.
Right. Yeah. I think Carol Lindstrom, who's the We Are the Waterkeepers author, had made that point. There seems to be continuing in publishing that a whole lot of very well-known authors, very well-known and bestsellers, who've now started to create more books with characters, and they seem to be the ones who seem to get of attention. And yet there's not that understanding. I think Mai made the point, there's not the lived experience for a lot of these. They're looking for an author, an illustrator who can present different images in the pages of the book. And so I do love what you're saying about, let's take a look and see who's out there. And also it's a great way to discover other authors who've been there for a long, long time. I mean, there are publishers who have been there forever. Cinco Puntos Press is one of them, Children's Book Press, who were real pioneers about voices. There have been books out there in our community culture and who've been out there pressing. And then again, look at a lot of, I think you mentioned the Stonewall Awards. You look at Pura del Pre and, all of these authors, librarian organizations, and they're really out there looking and doing some good hard looks at the books being presented. So I'm really, really excited about that. Okay, so we're actually running out of time because this is such a great topic, and I think each of you have your Instagrams there, and Shelby had shared them so that you could all follow them. I could do this forever because I just love what you're doing and what you're saying, and I can't wait to hear more. And unfortunately, I think we're at the end. I think Lexi said we're kind of at the end, but. I want to thank all of you for being part of it and being champions. I think look for us all on the Little Free Library Stories pages and newsletters, definitely blog. All of you keep recommending books, keep your voices out there front and center. We are really, really excited. I'm going to have to hand this off. I'm really sad because I could go on. So I'll check in with all of you later. Let me hand it off to Lexi. Before we close out, let's tell you a little bit, this Little Free Library September giveaway in collaboration with Harper Perennial. 200 copies of Native Son by Richard Wright, which has been a banned book. You can win it at the link in the chat. We're really excited about partnering there. And again, a pleasure. Thank you all so much. And thank you everybody for tuning in and trying to ask questions. We'll see you, throughout. All right, Lacey, take it away. See you, everybody.
Thanks, Anita, and thanks so much to Brandy, Mai, Krista, and Katie. It was really such a great conversation today, and I really appreciate you being here with us. And I saw lots of new names of the attendees, so I'm glad we got to chat with some new folks this time. As always, attendees will receive an email in the next couple of days with a link to the replay, the show notes, and you can sign up for a chance to win a diverse book bundle. We're excited to share some of our favorite books, which are banned books, with a lucky winner. And Shelby is going to share the link to our next chapter of Unbound in the chat. If you haven't already, we encourage you to follow Little Free Library on our social media channels, sign up for our e-newsletter, so you can stay in the know about what's going on at Little Free Library, including future episodes of Unbound, book giveaways, and other different programs and projects we're working on. Thank you so much again for joining us. We'll see you next time.